Welcome to Blog Investigations. This is Module 5, and I'm your instructor, Joe Senor. First of all, let's go over our copyright information. All material in this presentation is copyright 2015 by Joseph Senor and PI Mall, LLC. Any reproduction in physical or electronic format is not allowed without the written permission of Joseph Senor. If you wish to use this information in a presentation of your own or in other materials, please contact me at jsenor@cibir.net. So Module 5, let's talk about contract when it comes to blog investigations. Now here's the thing. When it comes to contracts, most PIs have a very basic contract that covers surveillance and other standard PI work. However, this will not help you when it comes to any internet or cyber type investigation. And by cyber type, I'm talking about computers, laptops, tablets, cell phones, technology equipment, okay? So you need to make sure that you have a separate contract just for these internet and also cyber investigations. Now, in this section, I will cover what is in my contract. So unless you're me, and I hope you're not, you should have a lawyer looking at adjusting your contract to cover you and your business when it comes to these blog investigations. Now, many times I understand we cut corners to save money, but contracts and your legal protection should never be one of the areas you cut corners on. So please have a lawyer update your contract to cover blog investigations. Now, first of all, one of the things your contract must discuss is that this investigative request from your client is regarding a website and internet research. Now, why do I say that? Well, you've got to remember the nature of the internet. The internet changes every hour, every minute, every second. So a posting and a blog investigation report you turn in right now, in 5 minutes, all that information could be completely different, if not gone, from the internet. So you make sure at the beginning you let your client know this investigative request, the reason they're hiring you, is about a website and internet-based research. Also, make sure your contract has a statement that says something along the lines of, your report will be dated and all information gathered on that date is what is presented. Now again, think about the nature of the internet and how quickly things change. This is why you need to put these statements in there, because you want to make sure your client hears over and over again that while you've given them the report, in 5 minutes, all this data could be gone from the internet. Okay, so make sure you're covered there. Now, let's go into a number of statements that I feel and I have in my contract to ensure that my client understands everything that they're getting. So with these next things I'm going to cover, these are statements in my contract, and next to each statement I have my client initial next to it. So I know for a fact we have discussed this, the client knows it, and the client accepts this information, okay? So the first statement I have in there is, the nature of the internet is dynamic change and information changes quickly. This way they can say, all right, I understand what you're giving me is what things are as of that moment and can be different in 5 minutes. Second, the nature of websites on the internet can change in an hour or a day. So websites that are in the report may not be around any longer. Again, covering ourselves for dynamic change on the internet. Third, information on the internet is not 100% verifiable. That anything can be put on the internet and changed in a second. We all know this as private investigators, but we need to make sure our client understands that we are providing them all the information we can gather. We verify it as much as possible, but we cannot be 100% accurate with every piece of information, because by the time we write it down, it could already be changed. Fourth, you may or may not need to work on their computer. I have them sign this in case I have to do some work on their computer. Also, You may or may not need to monitor their home network. Again, we're looking at the idea that we're going to have to potentially monitor their home network for this activity of somebody going to a blog or posting on a blog, if it's a spouse or significant other situation. Next, you may or may not need to create a backup of computers, because again, if we're in a situation where the spouse, significant other, partner, or potentially employee is the center of the investigation, we may need to create a backup of the computer. Next, that you may or may not need to capture any and all network traffic on their network. So again, we are making sure that the client understands that the investigation may go from just monitoring a website and gathering information about the WordPress blog or blog website, that we may now have to take the next step and image their computer or their spouse's, significant others, the target computer. We may need to monitor the network traffic on that home network. Okay? So we've got to make sure we have that in there. And again, I have all my clients initial next to each one of these statements so they are 100% clear on what pieces of the investigation may change and what I consider the most important pieces of the contract. Now, next comes a big area as well. You must also have a hold harmless clause for any information that you gather and data that you provide. Because again, we all know the internet data can change in a heartbeat. And with the internet, people can post anything on the internet and it doesn't have to be true whatsoever. We use this hold harmless clause to protect ourselves from that type of a situation. You must also have a hold harmless clause for any potential damage to the computer, because no matter what, the minute you put hands on a keyboard of your client's computer, if something goes wrong, you know the client's going to say it was your fault. So you want to make sure you have a hold harmless clause in there to protect you from any type of potential damage. Even though you didn't do anything wrong, that Murphy came in the door and kicked in the computer's side of it or broke the keyboard, that was Murphy's law that did it, not you. So you got to make sure you have this hold harmless clause to protect you from that. Now, also, remember, any data you collect, if for whatever crazy reason you decide to provide a zip of a file from that website, that blog, you download a file or an executable or something from that blog and put it on that report for your client to open up and look at, hey, you got to remember, you potentially could be infecting your client's computer with this information, and you need to be protected, okay? So again, please make sure you have a hold harmless for damage in your contract. Now, also remember we talked about potentially infecting the computer due to, for whatever crazy reason, putting an executable or some type of file like that on your report. Well, here's the other thing. You must also have a hold harmless clause for any potential damage to the computer or loss of network data. Trust me on that. Loss of network data. If their computer cannot connect back to the network, there's a problem. And if you're dealing with a employer situation and this is the company computer and it can't connect to the company network, there could be some real problems. So you've got to make sure you have a hold harmless to protect you in that situation. And always make sure that your contract has in it that you will do your best effort for this case and that information on the internet can be faked and you have no control over that. So again, look at this. We say it over and over again because for me, I am a firm believer in the fact that once you tell a client something, if it's critical, you got to tell them again and again so that this way there's no doubt whatsoever that you've informed them of this. Okay? So now let's talk about what else needs to be in this contract. Now, in my blog investigations contract, I have a section that says client case requirements because I want it written out very, very specifically what we're going to be doing. So This is an area that either I can fill it out if I want to, or I normally like the client to fill this out. First thing is blog title to be investigated, because the client may only know the title of the blog. Blog URL to be investigated. That's good if they know the URL. Start date of the investigation, end date of the investigation, the reason for the blog investigation. Then I ask, what key posting or event started the investigation? In other words, what made them want to have it investigated? I want a date, I want a time, I want a URL if possible. Next, investigation boundaries. In other words, do they just want me to investigate the blog posting, the entire blog, blog writers, cross postings? How deep should I go with this investigation? I want limits, boundaries set into place by the client here. Next, date the blog information was discovered. Again, the client, when they discovered this. Email addresses associated with the case. In other words, do they know email addresses? Have they emailed somebody? Has somebody emailed them? Okay. I want them to list any social networks that are associated with this case. In other words, was it posted on Facebook? Was it posted on Tumblr? Was it posted on MySpace? I need to know where it's been at. Law firm with the lawyer's name involved. Do they have a law firm working on this? If so, what's the lawyer's name? Next, is the target aware of the investigation? Really, I really want to know this. And has law enforcement been contacted yet? You got to know this sort of thing. Next, do you require undercover operations for this? In other words, do they want me to create an undercover account, a fake account? Do they want me to contact the individual, pose as a writer, something like that? Are you requesting investigative work involving your computers or monitoring of your home network? I want them to know up front, hey, do you want me to go as far as investigating your home computers, monitoring of your home network? Next, I list the rates for work, and I make sure they see this and initial off next to it. And then finally, I put a statement of, all reports are provided on CD only. Printouts are an extra cost due to the potential pages. Because internet stuff, we can look at 500 pages, 1,000 pages, or more. So again, this is the basics of what I have in my contract for a blog investigation. In the next module, or part 2 of this module, we're going to cover pricing. So I'll see you in part 2 of this module.